This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzales. Jeff Wood is set to die 6 o'clock Texas time today, unless the governor of Texas, Rick Perry, intervenes. Our guests are his family, his wife, Kristen, his mother and father, Danny and Mitzi Wood. They're in Livingston, Texas. Liliana Segura is with us in New York. She's been following this case on the board of the campaign to end the death penalty. Can you talk about, you were mentioning Kenneth Foster. He did not die a year ago at this time under the same law, because you feel of the public pressure.
Absolutely, yeah. Talking to his attorney afterwards, you know, he said that the on the ground, the grassroots organizing that took place and the editorials that ran in just about every major paper in Texas and the international attention, all of that really put a lot of pressure on the board and on the governor to examine the case. And it really came down to the wire. As I was sitting here last year, I remember we didn't know what was going to happen, but in the end, the board voted 6-1, which was just almost unprecedented. That never happens in Texas, to recommend clemency. And the board has to recommend clemency, and the governor has to sort of sign off on it. So at that point, it became about convincing, you know, really pressuring the governor to take their recommendation and grant clemency, and that's what happened. And in his statement where he granted clemency, Perry sort of referred to the law of parties and said this is something that needs to be re-examined. And one would hope that 1 year later in the state of Texas, maybe this actually would have happened. This law would have been re-examined. But yet we find ourselves in a situation where the board has voted unanimously to just go ahead, ignore the facts of the case, ignore the controversy over the law of parties, and sign off on the execution. So,
and for those who may want to weigh in with the governor on this matter, where would they go?
Well, right now the main thing to do is to call the governor, and I have the number right here, and I can give it right now. It's 512-463-2000, and you can also go to savejeffwood.com, and the information to email and to call is there. And basically, I mean, given that the board has already made its recommendation, the governor has to. It's up to him right now. So the more pressure we can put on him, the better.
The legislature, is it weighing the law of parties? So,
yeah, basically what they're looking for right now, what we're looking for is a 30-day stay of execution, and that doesn't mean that on the 31st day that, you know, the execution will follow through. I mean, what will happen then is that it would mean a new execution date. It would mean maybe 6 months, maybe a year, in which the Texas legislature could then look at the law of parties. And the chance of this happening is actually quite good. 10 members of the Texas legislature have already wrote letters to the members of the board saying the law of parties is an aberration. We have to get rid of this. And so there is energy around this issue right now.
We're going to go back to Livingston, Texas, to the family of Jeff Wood, Kristen Wood, his wife, and Danny and Mitzi Wood. We wanted to turn to Mitzi Wood, his mother. What kind of support are you getting in Texas, and when did you last see Jeff? We're going to try to get the audio for them fixed. Again, they are sitting right outside of the prison where Jeff is. What happens, Liliana, in the course of a day like this? Texas is the place where more people are executed than anywhere in the country. He's in the Livingston prison right now.
Right, and basically the death chamber is in Huntsville, Texas, and over the course of the day, in the hours preceding his execution, he is taken, you know, in a sort of heavily armed situation to the execution chamber, and the situation is called death watch in the preceding hours. And the family, you know, in Texas, it's very common that there are vigils, there are protests, there's that sort of thing. But it's really, I mean, one talks about the death penalty as cruel and unusual punishment because of the execution. But when you consider the fact that this is a man who still doesn't know right now whether or not he's going to live or die, those hours, and then the extended hours of waiting when the governor still hasn't made a decision, it's really appalling. Let's try to go back to Livingston.
Mitzi Wood, I hope people will just strain to listen carefully. We're having some problems with the mics outside the prison. When did you last see your son? What is he saying right now?
Last saw our son yesterday for about 30 minutes, early in the morning. And basically, he's more worried about how his dad and I and his siblings are taking this, as well as his nieces and nephews. He's holding very well. He's got a strong Christian walk, and as such, he's relying heavily on the Lord and taking him through this, be it we have to go through with the execution, or if Governor Perry will give us clemency at least at this time for 30 days in order to review the case further. And it really needs to be reviewed because there's a lot of stuff that is not making sense. To me, even as a layperson not knowing anything about the law, I see the errors there, and I just hope he takes time and opens his heart to be receptive to do what we feel is right.
Mitzi Wood, your defense attorney for your son has maintained for quite some time that he was mentally ill and should not have been subjected to the death penalty as a result of this crime. Your sense of how the state has dealt with this issue?
I don't think they've dealt with the issue very well at all. Jeff has always had learning disabilities. He was diagnosed at the age of 4.5, 5 years of age with ADD, and of course, way back when, in the late 70s, early 80s, nobody knew anything about ADD. It wasn't prevalent to know exactly how long-term it was. They kept telling us by the time he was 12 years old, he would be out of it. It was a stage. Since then, we have learned it's not. And as such, the governor, the Board of Pardons and Paroles, the criminal justice system itself really have not helped his case at all. Sending him on an incompetency trial, finding him incompetent, sending him to Vernon State Hospital for 22 days. Says they talked to one of the doctors up there for about 2 hours, and then says, oh, he's competent. I really have a problem with the Texas system. I don't think that's true.
We want to thank you all for joining us. Mitzi Wood, Danny Wood, Kirsten Wood, the wife of Jeff Wood. Tomorrow we will continue to report on this. Liliana Segura, last comment.
I would just say that in these next few hours, please call the governor. I can give that number again. It's 512-463-2000. And that's all we can do at this moment. So thank you.
Liliana Segura is with the Campaign to End the Death Penalty and a staff writer and editor at AlterNet.org. As we move now to our next segment.